So hi all, the last time I was speaking to you on doing a grassland video, we were doing an example of a grass wedge when there was a deficit. Again, we have been experiencing dry and drought type conditions in Ireland and in the UK over the past 3 to 4 weeks. And we're about to come out of that now, hopefully at this stage everybody has got some rain. But I am conscious of the fact that a lot of people, there's a big range between people, who've got maybe 2 inches of rain or even more, and equally some people who have only maybe got a half an inch of rain, which may not be enough in their particular circumstance. Either way, any bit of rain in a drought type situation is good, and we expect growths to improve. So this video is all about, again, what do we need to do now at farm level to cope with the higher growth that's about to come, hopefully. And again, it's all to do with grass measurement, it's all to do with creating grass wedges and interpreting grass wedges. So I just want to do a quick bit of background again to grass wedges first before we delve into an example wedge where there was a drought and then there's growth coming, and how do we adjust it. So again we have kind of a joint screen here between the screen on the wall, which we have another camera on, and myself. So a grass wedge is basically a visual appreciation of the grass on the farm, of the distribution of the grass on the farm. So again, the green bars represent where each paddock and how much cover is on each paddock. And again, just to note that I suppose the scale here in terms of average farm cover is available cover. It's what's available from 3.5 centimeters upwards. And again, in the UK or in New Zealand or so, it's on total cover, which is an additional 1,500 onto that. So again, just an example of the wedge that you see on the screen there. The highest paddock is at 1,400 kilos of dry matter per hectare available cover. And so in the UK or New Zealand or wherever where they use total cover, that would equate to 2,900. Okay, where you just add on the 1,500 that's below 3.5 centimeters. So all the examples I'll be using, that scale, you'll have to account for that scale if you're looking in from UK or from New Zealand or any place which measures total cover. Okay. So again, the green lines represent the cover per paddock. The blue line then represents the amount of grass that you need on the farm. It's the target line on the farm. And we just need to understand how is that target line drawn. It's the joining of 2 points, which is the target pre-grazing cover. Every time the covers go into a new paddock, how much grass do they need in that paddock? And the residual, how much grass we want to leave behind. So in the example on the screen, again, you can see the target at the top end is just under 1,400. It's just actually 1,300 or 1,292 in this example. And in the bottom end, then it's around probably 50 of a residual. So it means that the paddock has been grazed very, very well. Okay. So again, generally that residual cover is fixed through the year. We want the cows grazing well and leaving very little cover in the paddock after grazing. Anywhere between 0 and 50, maybe 60, 70 is fine. But then the target pre-grazing cover at the top end of the scale is movable. Okay, and that's what you're in control of. Okay, so the next slide then just shows where those figures come from. So the target pre-grazing cover, it's a calculation where the demand on the farm multiplied by your target rotation length plus the residual cover, which is generally set at approximately 50. So it's demand times target rotation length plus the residual, again, gives you your target pre-grazing cover for the herd at that time. Okay, and again, just to recap, what is demand? How do we calculate demand? It's the number of stock that we have out grazing times the amount of grass that we're offering per cow per day in kilos of dry matter per hectare, divided by the total area that we have available for grazing across the farm. Okay, so again, it's just to recap in terms of where those figures come from. Okay, so an example of a perfect grass wedge. So you go out and you measure your grass. You enter the covers in the software program, be it pasture-based, be it AgriNet, or whatever software program you produce or you use, and the grass wedge, in general, will appear in front of you. So this is an example of a perfect grass wedge. Unfortunately, it seldom happens where you do a grass walk and your demand line, your target line matches your actual grass supply. It's great when it does happen. You have very little decisions to make, but very often it's different. There's maybe too much grass relative to the target line, or too little, which is what a lot of people have experienced in the last 3 to 4 weeks. But anyway, this is a perfect grass wedge. In this instance, the growth has been very simple or similar to the demand. Kind of halfway down in the figures there, you can see the demand in this instance is 59. The growth has been about 59. Again, this is a spring milking herd. The cows are out on full grass diets, some calves out as well, 21-day rotation. Everything is fine. So for the next week ahead, within this perfect grass wedge, there's probably no decisions to be made, because growth is similar to demand. It's expected to stay the same, and the same feeding regime, it stays in place. Okay. So this then shows the next slide that you will have seen there is a grass wedge that's in surplus. So very, very clearly you can see that the amount of grass is a lot higher in practically all the paddocks, is way above that target blue line. So there's already a surplus on the farm, and if this is allowed to continue, surpluses will continue to build, and you'll have a problem then that the pre-grazing cover will be too high ahead of the cows. It's going to affect the quality of the grass in the next rotation, because you won't get the residual down low enough, and there's a knock-on effect then. Quality of the sward drops, cow performance then subsequently drops. And so action is needed in this instance. There's consequences if you don't take action, and action is needed. And an example here then is that you can see in the box in the top, the figures in the top right hand corner of the screen, showing that there's some concentrates being fed in this instance. Maybe they can be reduced to increase the grass intake. If you increase the grass intake, the demand rises, which means that blue line will rise as well. Okay, and hopefully meet the surplus grass, or eat into the surplus grass that's there. If you try that, or if you can play with the program and see is that enough. If it is, great. If it's not, well, then the next step is to take out some surplus silage, surplus paddocks in the farmer silage, be they pit silage or run bale silage. And again, what you're doing there then is you're taking out area. So again, that means that the demand will rise again. So the blue line will actually rise a bit more when you do that as well. Okay, so it's an example of a wedge in surplus. A wedge in a deficit then, which is very typical of, we'll say, a lot of farms over the past 3 to 4 weeks. Again, in a drought type situation, and this wedge kind of epitomizes that. So your blue line is well above the supply that you have. So again, growth is low, demand is obviously higher than your growth. There's consequences. If you don't take action, well then you're going to race around. Your rotation length is going to get very, very quick. You're going to be moving from paddock to paddock to paddock very quickly, and you go in a tailspin, and before you know it, you have very little grass on the farm, and it's not allowed enough of time to recover for the next grazing again. So again, you're in control. In this situation, then what you do is that you would reduce the demand. You can't automatically lift the paddock growth, because it's subject to ground conditions or weather conditions at the time in the main. So in this instance, what you do is you try to force that blue line down to where the grass supply is. Push it down on top of those green bars. So what you do then is that you reduce the amount of grass intake by increasing concentrates or increasing other feeds into the diet. That'll drop the demand, and that'll drop the line then, so that you have both in equilibrium. Okay, and again, that's what most people will have done, or again, hopefully over the past 2 or 3 weeks, just to slow things down, slow down the movement through the paddocks, to be able to cope with the low growth that they're experiencing. One very important thing in interpreting a grass wedge is really the first thing that you should look at, and adjust. When the program creates a grass wedge, it'll pop up in front of you. The first thing you need to look at, whether it needs to be adjusted or not, is the rotation length. Okay, and so the rotation length that you enter into the program, this is the rotation length that you want for the next weeks, for the next 1, 2, 3 weeks ahead. You're trying to plan for the week ahead. You're just after measuring your farm. Now you need to know what, do I need to change any management practices over the next week ahead? The first thing you need to change is rotation length, and that is dependent on the growth that you expect to get. So you can see in the table, if growths are expected to be low, you need to lengthen the rotation length. If growths are expected to be high, you need to speed up, you need to shorten the rotation length. Okay, and this is very important in the context of interpreting a grass wedge. Okay, this is another slide, just in a similar vein to it. What you need to consider. What was your growth in the last week to 10 days? What's the forecast? Is everything telling you that the growth is going to increase or decrease? Okay, so again, just using the example, the growth in the last week to 10 days was poor because of drought. So we would have planned for a long rotation length last week, for example. But now with the advent of rain, the expected growth is likely to increase. So based on the previous table, we should now be looking to shorten the rotation length again to try to help to cope with the increasing growth that's going to be there. Okay. Now then, when you adjust your rotation length in the program, the next thing you need to do then is adjust your demand line again. And you're in full control of the demand line. It's not like the growth you're not in control of, but you are in control of demand line. And again, demand is how many cows you have out grazing, how much grass you're giving them, and what area you have available. They're all things that you are under control of. Okay. So I'm just going to come from this now and go into a kind of an example grass wedge, which is coming from a drought type situation. It was in a deficit, and there was other feeds going in there, and now with the advent of rain after coming on the farm, growth is going to increase, and what management decisions need to be taken now quickly to cope with the increase in growth. Okay. Okay. So again, we've just created a dummy grass wedge here, just again to explain this. Okay. So I'll just give you a quick look at the grass wedge itself. Okay. So again, that looks at first glimpse, that looks fine. Invariably the blue target line is matching the grass supply in this situation. Okay. But this is a wedge that was adjusted about 10 days ago, let's say, again to cope with this low growth. And what we can see in here, for the farmer to make it fit 10 days ago, he increased the rotation length up to 24 days because his growth was low. He also had to increase the amount of meal or concentrate and silage in the diet, reduce the amount of grass into the diet to reduce the demand, which basically got the blue line to drop down to the grass supply. Okay, so this particular farmer, this particular example did well, understood the consequences understood the problem of having a drought type situation, and adjusted the rotation length and adjusted the feeding regime accordingly. Okay, but now of course we know growths are about to take off. He's got plenty of rain, the state of growth and the growing conditions, the colour of the sward looks good, and so growth is about to take off. And so we expect in this situation, we expect growth to come back up to probably somewhere to come from about 40 to 50, to come back up to probably 70 or 80. Okay. So again, if you remember, the first thing we have to change and adjust is the rotation length. So again, based on the previous table, I think we should be planning a rotation length of about 20 days for the next week ahead. Okay, and you just watch the blue line will drop. And this is slightly counterintuitive. You think now, well, you have a big surplus. Okay, you have a big surplus because you dropped the rotation length. But of course, now the challenge is can we get that blue line to rise again to meet the grass supply? Okay, and how you do that then, of course, is by adjusting demand. So this farmer was feeding a lot of concentrate and a lot of silage and reducing the amount of grass to reduce the demand, to bring down the line. Now he can bring it back up again. Okay, so if we say definitely we take out the silage, so that we take it from 2 to 0, we bring the grass intake bin back up to probably 14. Okay, our demand is 41 and we increase it up to 48. Now the line has risen again slightly. Okay. Now, can we reduce the meal? You can say, well, it's equilibrium. Can we play with it and say, well, can we actually take out the meal as well? Okay. So let's say we drop the meal to 1 and then we bring this up to 16. So it's about 17 kilos total intake. We update, save it. Now we've written our demand to 55. Okay. And now look at the line. The line has increased up again, and you can see even over and above the grass supply. So some farmers might say, well, okay, that's a step too far. Okay, and they would reduce the grass again and keep some of the meal in there. I would take probably a little bit more of a less conservative view. Again, the demand is only 55. If we're confident we're going to get a growth of 70 and 80, well, then we should be probably a little bit more ballsy in the decision and say, well, okay, I only need 55. I'm going to grow 70, and next week the wage is going to be a lot higher anyway because growth will have exceeded demand. Now, in this particular program in AgriNet, there is quite a useful tool here to project forward a week ahead, assuming a certain growth. Okay, so in this instance, I'm just going to put in here, set project the wage in 7 days using a growth rate of, again, we'll say 70. We're confident we're going to get a growth of 70. And now, update, save. So there you can see the projected wage next week for when you go to measure. So it helps to alleviate the concern. Again, if I return to the previous one, some farmers might say that's concerning. I have too much of a deficit up here at the top end of the wedge. But the projections 7 days ahead with our expected growth of 70 shows, do you know what, I'll be fine. If you're confident that you're going to get the growth of 70, well then, okay, you can proceed in with the original plan of, obviously, first and foremost, definitely taking out the silage. And for me, in this instance, in this example, I would have been reducing that concentrate inputs probably down from 3 down to 1. Maybe then next week with the intention of taking out the concentrate and having total grass intakes. Okay. But this is an example of, hopefully it's an example of a wedge situation for most farmers this week ahead, where you're coming from a deficit, low growth, concern about grass supply and so on, and now moving towards higher growth and potential surpluses. The saving here, of course, as we know, the important thing is it's quick decisions. So this is a 350 cow farm, which we've just, for the week ahead, we've decided to take out 2 kilos concentrate and silage as well. But just in terms of the economic cost of the concentrate itself, you know, that's 0.7 of a ton per week that per day that you're saving. Okay, in terms of concentrate inputs, and that's a lot. Okay, so there's the worry is that farmers will delay this decision. Grass will be building on the farm over and above what they need, and then they'll delay the decision to pull out these other feeds, and there's a financial cost to that. Okay, so in high growth rate period, timely decisions, quick decisions, controlling the surplus, maximizing the grass intake and reducing the amount of these other feeds in the diet is key. So We'll come back again, hopefully in another week or two. We'll come back again, and we'll still be dealing with surplus wedges. And I've no doubt maybe there'll be some other things that will be happening out in farm as well in terms of grassland management. We'll be probably into late June, early July at that stage. And again, the mind and the focus and the outlook actually shift towards autumn grazing management and grassland management as well, along with a little bit about second cut silage. Okay, thanks for watching. Hope it was useful.